Hello?
Good afternoon. A warm welcome to all of you in the international webinar on World Ocean Day 2020, Reflection on Healthy Marine Environments. The webinar is organized by the Center of Southeast Asian Studies, CSIS, Indonesia, and is supported by Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries, Republic of Indonesia. Please allow me to be a moderator in this webinar, and my name is Asep Setiawan. I would like to remind some information before our dialogue began. Here, the sum of information from the organizer. First of the Q&A session will only be done through the chat box in YouTube Live, of course, for all our participation here or audience. And all the participation could write down their question in live chat box featured in CSIS Indonesia YouTube account. And I would like to remind also, please identify your organization. And the moderator will select the most relevant question to be answered. And the question, of course, hopefully to be delivered in English. And lastly, to appreciate your interest in our event, the committee will provide e-certificate. The certificate registration link will be posted later. And this is the information. So all the slides also can be accessed in the link here and can be seen later also. But all of information can be accessed in CSIS Indonesian website, csisindonesia.com. And also in our Instagram and Facebook and media social link. Let's introduce first with our presenter, our audience, our panelists today. Firstly, I would like just to remind also that the event will be recorded. So we will be seen also later in YouTube. The first presenter will be Pak Widodo Setio Pranowo. He is Senior Researcher at Research and Human Resource Development Directorate, Minister of Ocean and Fishery, Republic of Indonesia. And the second speaker is Mr. Jerker Timelander, CUBC Coordinator from United Nations Environment Program. The third panelist will be Andre Rodriguez Aquino, Environmental Specialist from World Bank. And Pak Dr. Mubarik Ahmad, he is Director Conservation Strategy Fund Indonesia. And the last one is Pak Arisman. He is Executive Director of Center for Southeast Asian Studies. So first, I would like to invite Pak Widodo Setio Pranowo to present its view and all of the material in webinar. Please, Pak Widodo.
Sorry. Okay, thank you, Bang Asep. Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. I think the presentation have trouble with the font type, so the title not present at the presentation. So yeah, the presentation should be toward the establishment of the Indonesia Ocean Health Index. In here, I speak in the behalf of Professor Insinyur Raden Syarif Wijaya. He is the chairman of the Agency for Research and Human Resources, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. Next, please. So I will have 5 outline here. I would like to present the establishment of the Indonesian Ocean Health Index and show how the achievement and then some advancing research will be shown in this presentation, including the progress research and the perspective. Next, please. So the background, how we would like to establishing the Indonesian Ocean Health Index, since if we have a look into this this diagram, so we have the interconnection between the human health and the activities in around the seas and the ocean. So these activities like the fisheries and aquaculture, renewable energy, scientific discovery, shipping, and so on, will have the positive and negative impact to the human. The positive impact on harm denotes a mitigation force, and the negative impact on the benefit represent a limiting force. So all the positive impact, the negative impact would be computed to become an index to scoring the benefit that ocean can provide to the people. Next, please. So we already have the agreed upon the thematic about the thematics would be included in the Indonesian Ocean Health Index, which is we're trying to compute the Ocean Health Index from 10 thematics such as the food provision, artisanal fishing, natural product, carbon storage, coastal protection, and so on. So this Ocean Health Index also could showing the performance of the local environment management, such as the land use, water and air quality, and disaster risk. Next, please. So we start the development of the Indonesia Ocean Health Index start from 2016 up to now, which is in the beginning, we have the collaboration with the Conservation International Indonesia, and then we have published the policy brief, the book, and then in 2018 we launched the Indonesia Ocean Health Index for the first time, to showing what our goals and so on. And in 2019 we already have the prototype of the thematic, including the variable. Next, please. In here, we would like to show you some of our pilot project. One is the Raja Ampat pilot project in collaboration research with the Research Center of the Pacific Ocean Resources from the University of Papua. And we also have the collaboration with the Pajajaran University to conduct the Jakarta Bay pilot project. Next, please. And also we have the pilot project in Bali. And if we have to look to dive to the variable and subvariable, we would like to show how we trying to advancing research by conducting the hydrodynamical modeling, including the marine debris and organic trash simulation. So when we talking about the marine debris simulation, so we would like to conduct also the sub-variables such the hydrodynamic modeling, which is, for example, this is the Java Sea ocean current, which is influenced by the monsoonal wind, coupling with the tidal, and the ocean current will transporting the marine debris. Next, please. This is the example what we have done, how the ocean current could transporting the microplastic. This is the simulation of the macroplastic trajectory in the Jakarta Bay, which is the west monsoon ocean current, showing that the macroplastic from the Citarum River and other river discharge will flowing to the Jakarta Bay. And because of during the January, there is a west monsoon wind, so the ocean current will coming from the west to the east. So the microplastic trajectory not only entering to the Jakarta Bay, but also transporting to the east direction. Next, please. In contrary, when the east monsoon coming, so the ocean current will flowing from the east to the west. This is we can see that the color rectangular here represent of the macroplastic will transporting goes to the west. Next, please. So we also conduct the simulation. For example, if in Jakarta Bay, then put some reclamation island, and this is will showing that the microplastic will stranded into the straits between all the islands. Next, please. And also during the east monsoon, then the microplastic will also stranded in the east part of the reclamation island. Next, please. And we also have been done the simulation, the microplastic debris in the Java Sea, which is quite interesting. We can see here that we conduct the 7-month simulation. The microplastic uh, showing the behavior, the microplastic will be oscillating in the water column. So this is quite interesting because the microplastic uh, will be uh, trapped around 7 months before it goes to the other location. Next, please. In this year, until 2020, our scientists will conduct the more simulation, which is uh, will conduct the simulation in the Manado coastal bay. So we would like to have this simulation during 2010 until 2020 until 2022, and then all this simulation result will provide to the other group, which is conducting the future of the Indonesia Ocean Health Index computation. Next, please. So we have also some program between 2020 until 2022, which is we would like to have the harmonization of the Indonesia Ocean Health Index with the SDGs indicator. And then we would like to develop the national guidance, and then establishing the national and local training. And we would like to asking the collaboration with the provincial level, because as we know that Indonesia is very large country, and then uh, we 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 very optimistic if the all the provincial government can support us, so the Indonesia Ocean Health Index will be much more efficient and faster to establish. And probably in the near future, we would like to have some test case, more test case in the 3 provinces like the Kepulauan Riau, Nusa Tenggara, and Maluku. And we would like to have also some collaboration with the National Ocean Data Center in BPPT, which is we would like to more establishing in the database for the ocean, for the Indonesia Ocean Health Index. So hopefully from World Bank can also help us, because this is need the very big financial support, since in KKP we have two two domain of the activities. The first one is the research, and then the second one is the implementation. So the implementation would like to link to the Ocean for Prosperity, or we call it as Lautra. So hopefully would World Bank could support for this program. Next, please. So for the closing remark, so we welcome all the state member regional of the South Asia and the international organization to work together with us in the subject of the research and monitoring capacity, human resources capacity building, and also the public outreach. So from us, from KKP, I think this is enough. So I would like to give it back to Mr. Asep. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Widodo, for its presentation. It's very exciting because Indonesia has a challenge, particularly how to make ocean and marine area be friendly and safe for people in around. Pak Widodo has explained how plastic, debris is very, very challenging. And then this is the indicator for healthy ocean. And just to remind the participants, I have seen in YouTube about more than 160 viewers that we are discussing of World Ocean Day 2020 with the title Reflection of Healthy Marine Environment. And if any question, please, you can write it down in chat box in YouTube. The next speaker is Mr. Jerker Timelander. He is from CUBC Coordinator, United Nations Environment Program. Pak Jerker is based in Bangkok. Please, for delivery of your view.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and thanks for having me in the webinar. I wanted to use my 10 minutes on a brief overview on the regional dimension of marine environments. Why is a marine environment healthy for the entire region, and how can we achieve a healthy environment that sustains the region? Can you take that next slide, please? So first of all, I think many people intuitively know this, but the marine and coastal resources and industries that depend on them are actually a very big part of GDP, gross domestic product, of the GDP of the world, but also in this region. So it's a significant economic gain from a marine space. And of course, we've set ourselves very ambitious goals with respect to the marine environment, enshrined globally in the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, there are many national goals in relation to development, economic, social, as well as environmental. The challenge we're facing here is that we are way off the mark. If we look at Sustainable Development Goal 14 on the ocean, we see that progress is not on track. That's the case in general. And then specifically for each of the targets, it's also clear that the data we have is very insufficient for us to really know where we need to improve and how. We can't really track effectiveness of our actions well. So we're falling short. The only area where we have decent data is on the existence of marine protected areas. That speaks specifically to target 14.5. But overall, as much as we know the ocean is important, we actually have relatively poor information on how we're doing with the ocean. It's very clear that we have many fundamental challenges, and I'll mention them in a moment. Suffice to say that some of those challenges the ocean faces can actually be turned into opportunities. There's financial and social gains to be made from removing some of these most pressing issues facing the marine environment. Next slide, please. I'm using this specific example for two reasons. One is that last time I had the pleasure of speaking in a CC's event, I previewed some of the findings of the report you see on screen, and now I can speak about the details a little bit. We all know how important coral reefs are to this region. It's the largest area of reefs of all marine regions. It's the highest diversity. It sustains a number of industries, and certainly it sustains very, very significant food security. Now, the value of coral reefs for the private sector is actually very, very significant, $14 billion per year in Indonesia alone. And so what happens with reefs actually has a very large impact on what the actual benefit the private sector derives is every year. So in good health, we can put 2 more billions into the hands of businesses every year. With bad health, we lose more than 2 billion every year from what we currently derive from coral reefs. So it's quite a lot of financial gain. And with this report we did, with this study we did, we modeled return on investment of specific interventions that would change reef. And we found that a relatively small number of interventions can make a very significant sort of contribution towards improving health and benefit we derive from reefs between now and 2030. And it's worth bearing in mind that this emphasized private sector gains, and it's probably safe to assume that the broader societal benefits of healthy reefs will exceed that of just private sector gains. So there is a public as well as a private sector benefit in improving management of coral reefs in Indonesia, in the region, and in the world. Next slide, please. So the challenge we face here is, of course, manifold. And one is, as you all know, reefs are very threatened. We've already lost maybe half of the world's reefs, maybe a bit less. It doesn't matter really, it's too much. So we've lost a lot of reefs to direct stress and to climate change in this region. Virtually all reefs are under direct pressure, and the same applies to most coastal ecosystems. We see a lot of coastal erosion. Damage caused to the economy of the region goes to 10 billion arising from marine litter. I don't know if there's a solid quantification of the cost of wastewater pollution or nutrient pollution from land, but it's likely to be very, very high. And of course, at the same time, the region is highly dependent on a healthy fishery productivity and so on. Now, the thing with the marine environment is that marine ecosystems, as well as the pollution that affects them and the economic benefits we derive from them, they cross many national boundaries. They're not very localized. What happens in one country is very much impacting another country. So in order to make something of marine ecosystems, something more, in order to use an ecosystem-based approach in managing them, we really need to take a regional view on all these dimensions, on the ecosystem itself, pollution and use, as well as economic benefits. So the regional dimension is what I want to emphasize here. One challenge in relation to that is very much that national boundaries lead to a degree of fragmentation, but that is equally significant at the national level, where many different jurisdictions, sectoral ones or other ones, aren't really well established to deal with marine environments and marine pollution. So COBSEA, that I want to speak about a little bit more, is a regional entity through which we can tackle some of these challenges through a regional process. Next slide, please. COBSEA is one of 18 regional seas conventions and action plans. It's administered by the UN Environment Programme, hence our base here. Secretariat is hosted by Thailand, but sitting at UNEP's regional office in Bangkok. COBSEA involves 9 countries in East and Southeast Asia around the action plan for protection and sustainable development of the marine and coastal areas. It's a formal intergovernmental process where these 9 countries identify priorities, in terms of issues they face and solutions to those issues that are collective and by virtue of being coherent across the countries, hopefully will have long-term efficacy in securing a healthier environment. Next slide, please. Can you move that to the next slide, please? Thank you. So, so within COBC, the thematic priorities agreed by the 9 countries are defined in our strategic directions, and they deal with some of the most pressing marine challenges, including land-based marine pollution, a very strong focus on marine litter, and the COBC countries last year revised the COBC Regional Action Plan on Marine Litter, which sets out a number of issues in tackling land-based sources of marine litter, as well as sea-based sources, strengthening monitoring and assessment to really support decision-making, and putting in place enabling conditions for assertive action. This included also the establishment of a formal working group on marine litter. So again, in the context of an intergovernmental policy-oriented process, there's a technical body, a standing technical body to exchange experiences, but also align effort across the different countries. COBC further focuses on marine and coastal planning and management. And of course, it has the overarching theme of strengthening ocean governance. So putting in place the processes and means by which countries collectively can more assertively and in a more effective manner tackle particular challenges. Next slide, please. On marine litter, which is all of our pet topic at the moment, I would dare say. It's risen to prominence, but with good reason. Marine litter is a very, very significant challenge here, and the region does contribute a very significant amount of marine litter. So in this context, as I mentioned, we have a regional working group which supports implementation of this regional action plan. Now, we're in the process of strengthening knowledge management and multi-stakeholder networking linked to this. So a regional node of a global partnership on marine litter is being developed on request from our intergovernmental meeting last year. And this will focus to some extent on encouraging, facilitating science that really speaks to the policy and management needs, as well as capacity building. We are supported greatly through project funding in this respect, and I'd like to acknowledge the government of Sweden and their support to us and the Sea Circular project, which takes a value chain approach to tackling plastic pollution and marine litter. So in order to make effective, lasting solutions, we have to understand the totality of the plastic value chain. And so not only look downstream, we certainly need to look downstream and understand what plastic does in the sea, on the beaches and in the ecosystems. But many of the lasting solutions are going to have to be in relation to how we produce, consume, and dispose of plastics and how we can improve that. I'd also like to flag here a key event that's coming up late this year. It's the Sea of Solutions event that some of you may have attended last year here in Bangkok. It was a very large partnership week for bringing solution providers and solution seekers together. This year, unfortunately, because of COVID, we're going to have to emphasize a virtual event. At the same time, we have the opportunity to leverage an even broader audience through virtual means and to specifically hone in on some of the very pressing issues right now, such as, can we actually waste less plastic during a pandemic? And if so, how can we do that safely? So we'll explore that a bit more later in the year and look forward to your participation there. Next slide, please. Now, looking a little bit beyond marine litter, I also wanted to emphasize a few other ongoing activities through COBC and by the countries. One relates to this issue of getting together better data, better understanding on how we're doing with respect to ocean priorities. COBC is in the process of preparing an SDG implementation outlook, which will entail support to monitoring and reporting on SDG 14 and specific targets under that. Needless to say, such information is going to be critical to further implementation and to ensure that that implementation actually has the desired result. We have, building on past experiences, past projects, we're also this year conducting an in-depth review of legal and policy frameworks for marine and coastal spatial planning in the region. So basically understanding, do we have the processes, the policies, the laws in place to actually do proper marine and coastal spatial planning that cuts across sectors, that perhaps cuts across nations, and really enables an ecosystem-based management approach. And on the basis of that, we hope to be able to identify key areas for further policy development that we can pursue through COBS's intergovernmental meeting. There's a range of other project interventions, not least very significant investment through the Global Environment Facility, projects towards implementing the South China Sea Strategic Action Program, which also focuses on a rather high number of pilot sites to demonstrate sustainable management of critical coastal habitat, as well as fishery refugia. That's really by protecting key stages of fish life, of fish productivity, they can sustain and support healthy fisheries. And COBSI works with UN Environment and vis-a-vis other UN agencies to establish the foundations for what can become a sustainable blue economy. So without, as I put in that initial graph of sustainable development goals, it's the biosphere that's the basis for social and economic development. And without that, we are undermining the entire development model. How can we use environmental policy coherence to promote and create a sustainable blue economy? An example of that ongoing work is collaboration with the UNDP ADB in the development of ADB's Ocean Finance Initiative, which can catalyze investment towards a blue economy. So that's really, in a nutshell, what I wanted to bring into the meeting. And of course, I look forward to the discussion afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Jerker. Mr. Jerker, I think this very excellent presentation, and I think Pak Jerker has explained to us how collaboration is the key to maintain marine in East Asian countries is healthy, because it's will support life people around the marine in this area. Thank you very much, Pak Jerker, for presentation. And we will have later the question maybe about how to what extent then collaboration in East Asia countries are successful so far. And I would like to invite for the next speaker is Pak Andre Rodriguez de Aquino. He is environmental specialist from World Bank. And one of the presentation, the point is about what's so-called the blue economy. Please come from Pak Andre to present your presentation. Thank you very much. Pak Andre is with us.
Okay.
With us.
Yes. Selamat siang. Sorry, I was double muted. So thank you so much for this invitation and this opportunity. And congratulations for this initiative. I will take the time here to talk a little bit about this concept of blue economy and its application in Indonesia. I think many of these concepts here, they have already been alluded to, and I will try to give it a different spin, maybe with a stronger emphasis on the financial aspects of them. So if we move to the next slide, I will talk a little bit about this transition to the blue economy. The blue economy here, we are trying to define that term as basically the sustainable use of the oceans and the economic sectors that depend on it. Normally, this would comprise, of course, fisheries, marine aquaculture, coastal tourism, transport, marine transport, but also sometimes even more extractive uses such as renewable energies or gas, as long as done following blue principles, which would be basically the principles of sustainability. Then I'll talk a little bit about the role of the World Bank in this partnership with the government of Indonesia, and basically a little bit of some reflections about moving ahead with the blue economy in Indonesia, some very good discussions that we've been having with the government in the past months. So next. I will not spend too much time on the transition here because I think this has already been explored a lot. So the next slide. Indonesia is an archipelagic nation, right? I mean, I think it's one of the very few countries, large countries, where the very identity or the very term for motherland is linked to the water, right? Tanah air. So I think, I mean, that really shows the importance of the seas and the oceans for Indonesia. It's the second largest fishing and aquaculture nation. Significant portion of people depend on jobs, either related directly to capture fisheries or to the processing of fisheries or aquaculture. And fisheries is an important, is extremely important for food security, providing more than 50% of animal-based protein to the country. So these oceans have value for the country and for the world. The biodiversity of Indonesia's coral can only be spoken of in superlative terms. I mean, this morning, LIPI, the Indonesian Institute of Science, released the coral reef report, and again, making the case for this extreme high biodiversity and importance to the world of these reefs. So the next. These resources face threats. We have alluded to some of them. Overfishing. This is common around the world. It's no different from Indonesia. We will talk about the important measures that the government has been taking. We still have significant poverty among coastal communities in Indonesia. I mean, poverty among coastal, and particularly fishers, is still higher than the national average. And the threats to coastal and oceans ecosystems, such as degradation of coral reefs and mangroves. And then we have the ubiquitous problem of marine debris that Jerker was referring to. So next. Now, addressing these problems would generate significant results economically to the countries. To Indonesia. I mean, already the strong stance that the country took on IUU in the past years reduced pressure on fisheries, which creates opportunities for the renewal and restocking of fisheries with important impacts on the economy. Aquaculture has been increasing significantly in the country, has the potential for further increase when respecting coastal ecosystems. I mean, we also know sometimes when aquaculture has led to problems, particularly in the case when it has replaced the mangroves, such as in the case of the north coast of Java. But I think technologies and knowledge has increased, allowing an increase in production without harming the environment or even restoring. And I think the reefs, our colleague already presented some of these statistics, the importance of reefs for sectors, and particularly to the coastal tourism sector, is enormous. And as we all know, Indonesia is placing a lot of emphasis on tourism as a motor, as an engine of growth for the next years. So next. So I think the point here is managing the ocean sustainably is good for the economy, for the national economy. Now, how has the World Bank been working with Indonesia? I mean, let me just say that for the World Bank, the whole topic of blue economy has become a really important issue, and we have significantly increased our engagement in the sector. And Indonesia is one of the most important places where we are working in close collaboration with the government and other partners in this agenda. So next, this here. Just a little on our philosophy. We believe strongly that the oceans need to be managed in an integrated manner just because of the very fact that they are integrated. I mean, it's one ecosystem, there are no boundaries. There are specific ecosystems for sure, but there is a tremendous amount of interdependence across issues in oceans, from fisheries to marine debris to pollution and so on. Now, how to achieve this integrated management is not easy. And again, not only for Indonesia, but around the world. And I think this is the area where the countries are pushing the reflection at this stage. I'll get back to this a little bit later. In the next slide, I'll just present a little bit the portfolio of the World Bank. I think first, I would like to say that we are placing a lot of emphasis on supporting livelihoods of coastal communities and sustainable fisheries. This is, I would say, the primary mandate of the World Bank, whose goal is of reducing poverty. Second, the issue of marine debris, as with other institutions, has become a priority for the World Bank. So we are engaged in this through studies, through projects, investments, and building healthy and reducing degradation of coastal ecosystems, mangroves, seagrasses, reefs. So these three main areas, we are addressing them through several projects. Many of you are aware, those colleagues in Indonesia, CoreMap being one that has been going on for a long time. It's a almost 60 million project that works a lot on creating the knowledge, particularly on coral reefs. We are working with LIPI on this, and we are working with BAPENAS, ICCTF, on the management and the effectiveness strengthening of marine protected areas management in eastern Indonesia, particularly the Raja Ampat marine protected areas and Laut Sau, which is the largest marine protected area in Nusa Tenggara, in East Nusa Tenggara. Pau Widodo alluded to this very exciting new initiative that we are discussing with the government, with KKP, with the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, Oceans for Prosperity. So this would be a rather important and large project with the aim of improving livelihoods of coastal communities and improving management of fisheries and coastal ecosystems. As you can imagine, very ambitious, but it's ambitious because it's again trying to take an integrated approach. Livelihoods of coastal communities depend on the quality of the ecosystems. Fisheries depend on these ecosystems, such as spawning grounds that are found on mangroves, or the role of marine protected areas in generating spillover effects for fisheries. And again, fisheries is the base for an important portion of coastal communities. So this is a work in progress. The partnership with the Ministry of Fisheries is going well, and we are very actively preparing this project now. In addition to this, we have an Oceans Multi-Donor Trust Fund with the important support of the governments of Norway and Denmark. And this trust fund has been working with the coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and also other line ministries of fisheries, environment, on marine debris. Particularly, we have a number of studies on the metrics, baseline, on similar to what Pak Widodo mentioned, tracking marine debris in the ocean's currents. It's actually led by LIPI and KKP, and other activities, including marine spatial planning, RSDWP3K, provincial marine spatial planning. We are supporting some provinces in strengthening the capacity of monitoring the implementation of their spatial plans. To conclude, we have two new initiatives. One is the ProBlue Trust Fund. That's basically supporting a number of studies that help with the LAUTRA, the Oceans for Prosperity project, and the Coastal Fisheries Initiative, which is focused on private sector involvement in fisheries. Sorry for taking time on this. I think there is interest in understanding a few of our ongoing activities. And then a little bit coming to the closure, I would like to go back to the issues of some reflections on the blue economy for Indonesia. So the next and the next. One thing that the World Bank has been learning is that underlying the blue economy, you have a few principles or overall issues that they are fundamental. Blue finance, I mean, there will need to be money for this transition, money to address some of the management costs, to address some of the opportunity costs of reducing sometimes activities such as fisheries when you have over fisheries, money to strengthen capacity, money for infrastructure development sometimes. And there are different and new instruments for that. The World Bank, we have been working on a number of those. You probably heard about our experience with the Blue Bond, with the Seychelles. We have been working with countries on the establishment of conservation trust funds for marine protected areas management, so on and so forth. Second, intersectoral collaboration. I come back to this point a lot because we may have a very good management of fisheries, but still problems on the coast. And the equation will not close here, because even with very proper input-output controls in your fisheries, you would still face issues if your coastal resources are not well managed. So this integrated coordination is fundamental. And the third thing is data transparency and valuation of ecosystem services. Again, our UNEP colleague presented this excellent work on the valuation of coral reefs. These are very important materials to help us in the dialogue with decision makers, particularly the Ministry of Finance. I'm sure Pak Mubarak will also get to this when he speaks. To conclude, actually, I will probably conclude here because I've taken up my time. My last slide was just about COVID, and we can talk about this in the questions and answers. But I think the main point is that we do need to consider this, the impact of the response and recovery phase on oceans, and really use some of the opportunities that sometimes a slow down on activities, including pressure on tourism, for instance, in coastal areas, may offer to put the house in order, to put it that way, to address some of the pressures on these resources. Let me stop here and thank you very much for this. Look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Andre Aquino, for excellent presentation. Just to remind the audience here, because in YouTube I watch almost 200, yes, sometimes almost 200 viewers. Just to remind that we are discussion about the World Ocean Day 2020, and the last three, we have heard the last three speakers. The first speaker is Pak Widodo from Ministry of Ocean and Fishery, Republic of Indonesia, explains of the policy of Indonesia, how to deal such as plastic litters in the ocean and implication for the economy. Also, we have had presentation from Mr. Jacker Timelander from Bangkok. He is from United Nations Environmental Program. And the last one is Pak Andre Rodrigues de Aquino, is specialist from environment specialist from World Bank, who explains what the importance of blue economy for Indonesia and the suggestion of World Banks. The next speaker will be Mr. Mubarik Ahmad. He is Director, Conservation Strategy Fund Indonesia. I would like to invite Pak Mubarik to give his view. Maybe the microphone should be on first,
Okay.
please.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you first for the organizer to invite me to share some of the views on this, some of the informations, and very little few perhaps. My task is simple and easy to provide some highlights on the development of the SDG 14, which is the life below water, very much related to the big issues that we are talking today. So if we see in the next slide, this is what I would like to share. The first one is the adoption of SDG in Indonesia context, especially the SDG 14, and how indicators are being developed. And then a little bit about the approach to implementations and roadmaps, sharing some data from the government. And then some updates at the end of the presentation. So if we can go to the next slide. I guess everybody is familiar in this. If everyone gets waken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, everyone can talk about it forever. So next slide, please. So this is the SDG 14, the one that we highlight in the middle. This is the, it says conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. So again, this is a very big emphasis on the sustainable use of resources, which very much linked to all the talk before. So here, there are 7 main targets defined internationally and 3 additional targets that are depending on the context. So in Indonesia context, we could look at the next slide. How this thing being well, this has been said also by Jerker before. This is how the people of the marine group would like to see the SDG as a whole. That actually SDG 14 provide the platform for all of the other SDGs. If you look from below up, the 4 major things related to the oceans there are. The first one is I can see it here. Maybe we can see that in the previous slides, please. Slides 15 and the previous slides, please. No, previous one. Previous. Okay. Slides number 15 is life above water, life on land. There's as explained before, life on land very much influence life in water, and then the SDG 14 itself. And then the SDG 8, which is about water. And the last one is the climate change, the SDG 13. Those are all that influence very much the ocean environment in which all the livelihood depends. So next, we can just jump to the next slide. Next. And here is how SDG overall is being adopted in Indonesia. To my view, this is a very smart framework in which the government is grouping the SDGs into these 4 blocks and prioritizing actually the social system sustainability before the economic welfare sustainability. And the third one is, of course, ecosystem sustainability. And it is very interesting that the government has put the governance and partnership as a separate block, which pretty much saying to us that if you want to achieve sustainable development really, then the governance has to be done properly. And you cannot do that alone. Nobody can do that alone. It has to be done in partnership across stakeholders, across countries, through various mechanisms of collaboration. I think Andre and also Jerker has talked a lot about that before. Let's go to the next slide. So this is how it is being adopted in Indonesia. It's officiated by the Presidential Regulations number 59, 2017, that highlights the 4 blocks I have explained before. And toward implementation, it is being regulated by the decree of the Minister of National Development Planning, number 7, 2018. So all of the SDGs have its place in the development framework as a key indicator of success, and also each of the 17 SDGs have been defined its indicators of the indicators of. So there are attachment to, if you dig into the website of Bappenas under SDG Secretariat, then you will find all the documentations about the framework and actual indicators being used for development planning in Indonesia. Next. So these are the indicators that I mentioned earlier. There are 7 primary indicators about healthy oceans, about productive marine ecosystem, and about community welfare. So if you see indicators 14.1, 2 and 3, those are about healthy oceans system. And then 4, 5, and 6 are sustainable, are about the productivity of the marine ecosystem. It relates a lot to what Jerker and Andre have explained about the economic values of it. And then the last one, the last group was about the improving livelihood of community. It internationally, it has one indicator, inclusive ocean economy. But indicator 14A, B, and C here are more toward how do we actually implement that on the ground. And it will have some implications on policy and other implementing measures later on. Let's look at the next slide. Here is the trajectory of implementation as now being planned by the government and being part of the next 2 medium-term development plan. For sure, it is within the current 5-year development plan. This is about how sustainable harvest should be kept below the sustainably below the maximum level of biologically sustainable level. So the government has put target about, if nothing change, there is about 89% of the utilization of the seas will be above the threshold by 2030. But with intervention, it will go down significantly to 78%, which is very close to the limit, to the ceiling of the biologically sustainable levels of harvest. And this is related to the way the fishery management is being implemented and going to be strengthened in Indonesia, which is through the fishery management area system. So there is a significant effort going on with the government in both camps, the KKP and the Bappenas, and supported also by the World Bank. So the strengthening of the fishery management area system as a system, that's very important to achieve this goal and implement this trajectory toward 2030. If we look at the next slide, some scientists in the fishery have looked into what are the potentials of the next, what are the potentials of fisheries and where related to that kind of national targets of keeping the fisheries below the level of maximum sustainable utilizations. So you can see there that there are some indicators of what coral utilization, pelagic fisheries, demersal fisheries, panates fisheries, crabs, and things like that. So these are general ideas of how can we use the oceans more effectively for building community livelihood, but also at the same time keeping the sustainability intact, keeping the ecosystem health intact to to make it reproducing itself, to make it reproducing all the necessary fish that we need for people's livelihood. So this is one of the indicators in biologically sustainable harvest, targets 14.4. The next one, again, this is data from Bappenas, from the SDG Secretariat. Here is the trajectory of the implementations of development of marine protected areas. At this point, we have more than 22 million hectares already in place. But there is a trajectory to reach 32.5 million hectares by 2030. And with intervention, it will be achieved. But without intervention, you will see the red lines where it will go. What happened here is that people are hoping about. I think there is a shift in the thinking at the moment in the whole oceans community from both conservation as well as the fishery side. In the past, people used to see marine protected area purely as conservation area and at best for tourism, and these are nothing to do with the fisheries business. But now, I think there is a growing subscriptions to the idea that the oceans need to be looked integratively, in which MPA should be seen as part of the FMA system. The marine protected areas should be seen and should be seen as part of the fishery management area, without which the FMA will not be productive. So the productivity of the fishery management will depend a lot on the existence and well-being of the protected area. That's the point here. And then how it is going to be used, we can look at the next slide, how it relates to the fisheries. Andre and also Jerker earlier talked about the values of the ocean health to the economy, and also interesting from Jerker's slides, there is a point about actually healthy coral reefs will contribute more to the socio-economic benefit of the healthy reef is more. It will be enjoyed more by the community at large compared to the private sector enterprises. Well, definitely so, especially if you call values all the numbers. But there is a preconditions to that, which is access of people to enjoy the fishery resources. So total values can be very big, but if the access of people in the sectors are close to fishery, then it will not be of any use to them. In that case, then we will not be able to reach social sustainability. So the Indonesia scientist group in the SDG has trying to push this. Okay, we need to improve the protected areas to fishing ground to ensure their livelihood, and they can also improve their prosperity from that access. So this is a very important point from the way the core group of SDG targets and the 14.5, the sustainable harvesting. Then the 14.4, the MPA targets, is actually related a lot to what Pak Widodo has explained earlier about the Ocean Health Index. Yeah, this is quite an interesting discussion among the scientists involved in this. To what extent the government should declare a target and ready to roll an effort to a concerted effort to achieve that in terms of ecosystem conservation, in addition to making MPA management effective. So what we have as a latest update here is that the government is taking a stepwise approach, so to speak. Not all of the indicators are being disclosed and declared, but government is trying to be very carefully managing the expectation by making sure we have good information before it's get rolled out. And that's why now this metadata development is ongoing, and in line also with what Pak Widodo explaining earlier about building the good indicators of Ocean Health Index in Indonesia. Okay, and the other update here is that perhaps some people know there is an active scientist group acting as a core group of SDG 14, chaired by Dr. Lucky Adrianto from IPB. This group is coordinating closely and within the purview of SDG Secretariat support. So I'll stop there. I think it's very interesting to link all these presentations so far and how the health of the ocean contributes a lot, not just to the ecosystem health, but also to the economic well-being and livelihood of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Mubarik Ahmad, for this presentation. It's very detailed, and then we can see that the lot of requirement for Indonesia to achieve SDG 14. And before we have a question answer session, let's have the last presenter from Pak Arisman. He is Executive Director from CCS, Center for Southeast Asian Studies. So please, Pak Arisman, to present your view and your opinion about how important. But I see there's a lot of picture on it. Please, Pak Arisman.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Asep. Yeah, from the previous speakers, we already hear about blue economy, Ocean Health Index, as well as marine pollution. And the last one by Ms. Pak Mubarik is about SDGs 14 and also related to MPA, Marine Protected Area. I would like to start my presentation be more specific because we now doing research on the marine plastic pollution in ASEAN. So next slide, please. Yeah, in the ocean, World Ocean Day this month, I would like to reflect by why we need to protect the wide area under the water, including the ocean and also along the coast. Next slide, please. Yeah, unfortunately, when we look at this picture, before in the previous picture, it's very nice, beautiful, and we found there's a lot of plastic waste, including the plastic bottle, plastic bag, as well as styrofoam. This is also impact to the ecosystem, as well as for the human health. Next slide, please. Yeah, mentioned by Jerker from UNEP, marine debris is a global environmental issues. I believe the last 2 or 3 years, many conference and also workshop related to this topic. And we know that the threats can be found in all areas of the ocean, including the open ocean, deep sea, even in the remote island, and of course in the coastal area. Next. So the issue with the plastic as well, the macro and the microplastic. We start with the macroplastic. there's a plastic entanglement. Marine animal will be tangled up in the macroplastic litter, and also difficult for them to move or even for eat. Next. The second one is a plastic ingestion. There's maybe all of you also aware with this many picture about the turtle, also the many animal. They don't cannot differentiate between the food, their food, and then the plastic bag. So, and the last one in the Wakatobi, as we know that we found there's a when the fish there's a plastic inside. Okay, next. Yeah, so plastic divided by microplastic and microplastic. Both is become a problem. I call it a micro problem to become a macro problem. Next slide. Based on the several studies, the accumulation of plastic debris into the ocean can lead to increased percent of the microplastic, which is put in the ecosystem at risk of it deteriorating the impact. The microplastic also result in the negative health effects such as reduced stomach space for actual food and the buildup of plastic. There is toxic compound. And the latest study by marine biology and animal behavior found that microplastic can also pass through the food chains to fish when we consume this fish, and then microplastic will enter our system as well. Next. Yeah, I would like to share what we have done now, start December 2019 in ASEAN countries. As we know, marine litter, microplastic, plastic pollution become a global challenge. This is need a multi-stakeholder approach to solve these issues. So in ASEAN, 5 of ASEAN countries based on the JAMBEC research is a contributor to the ocean polluters. Our research will focus on 2 ASEAN countries first. Next slide. So this is our project. The name of the project is ASEAN-Norway Cooperation Project on Local Capacity Building for Reducing Plastic Pollution in ASEAN. The same like presentation by Andrew. We also get support from the Norway. We collaborate with Norway Institute of Water Research. How we do our research project. Next slide, please. The first is we do we call it monitoring of referent macroplastic. The purpose is to understand the problem in order to define the appropriate and feasible mitigation action. The second one is a long-term monitoring of environmental impact and the potential improvement. So this is the 2 primary purposes we hope. And in addition to the environmental monitoring, there's also we look at the socio-economic component, and we identify the type of product and plastic that found as a microplastic waste in the river. And this is contribute also for all the objective of this project. The important is how to provide the science-based knowledge on source and release of plastic waste into the river and going to the ocean. Next. This is our approach. We call it a catchment approach and case study. We start with 2 countries in ASEAN, which is in the the second rank and the 3rd rank, Indonesia and Philippines. For Indonesia, we work together with Ministry of Environment, Directorate of Marine Pollution. So we decide to do the research in Citarum in the upstream as well and the downstream. I believe also World Bank have the project in Citarum, so maybe this is also good to complement each other. And then in Philippines, they also doing research in the Imus River. We hope with these 2 case study, we can transfer of the knowledge from the case study to other ASEAN countries. Next slide, please. Our project will contribute to 2 SDGs. The first is SDGs number 12, responsible consumption and production. The second one is SDGs number 14, life below water. Next, please. Yeah, this is also research by JAMBEC, projected mismanaged plastic waste in the 2025. If we look at the data here, 60% is in the East Asia and Pacific countries. So how we solve these issues, the ocean plastic pollution, because the source is coming from the land. So we cannot solve in the ocean. So we have to also start working in the land because the source is from the land to the sea. Next slide, please. Yeah, from our perspective, our research center, we collaborate with several institutions, including ITB, Institut Teknologi Bandung, NDP. Besides, we doing the river monitoring, like done also by Mr. Widodo from KKP, how to make a projection about the microplastic or macroplastic. I think the other important issues is about how we change our behavior related to the plastic consumption. This is also very challenging, especially during the COVID pandemic. Looks like all over the world, the plastic packaging is increasing because people order everything, food from online and then delivered to your house. So this is also a challenge in not only ASEAN maybe, but this is also a challenge for all countries. So my last, not conclusion, but I try to take a note from all the speakers that we need collaborate in this webinar. There's a World Bank, UNEP, and CSF, as well as Government of Indonesia. Even in Indonesia itself, there is 3 ministry related to this marine pollution. Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries, and of course the coordinating Ministry of Maritime Affairs. So yeah, this should be discussed together to put it in the table, how to implement all the action. As we know together, Indonesia is very ambitious to reduce the plastic pollution 70% from the Ministry of Maritime Affairs. So how to achieve, how to do step by step, this is the important. I believe all the stakeholders should be involved, including the industry. Like now we are in the process of doing a discussion related to the EPR topic, because our Ministry of Environment tried to push the industry to reduce using the plastic component by and also responsible for their waste management. I think that's all from me. Look forward for the discussion. Thank you, Pak Asep.
Thank you very much, Pak Arisman. Mr. Arisman has explained detail on sample of project, how the protection marine from plastic, for example, pollution in Indonesia. And please, it is time for discussion. And we have received a lot of questions, and all of speaker should be answered the question at least, yeah. So far, ladies and gentlemen, the audience, we have already almost 1.5, and we have almost more than 150 visitors in YouTube. And the first question I would like to ask for Mr. Widodo. Is Mr. Widodo still with us?
Yes.
Yeah, Pak Widodo, there is a question from Kiki Teguh, for Borneo Tarakan University. How does GIS play an important role in saving ocean health today, especially in preventing maybe the other speaker will be add later, is okay. Please, Pak Widodo.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Asep. So, yeah, so the GIS, or the Geographical Information System, it's very important to playing the role of the visualization from the modeling simulation result to overlay with other variable, which is spatial variables such as the ecosystem, and then the and these fishing ground and others. So we could see that how the impact and the map of the conflict of the pollution to this kind of the ecosystem and the fishing ground. So yeah, so we very support and very suggested that we use the GIS for further study. So not only just diagram and other thing. So in two-dimensional map, so we could see more impact. And in the future, we would like to have the not only two-dimensional, but also the three-dimensional. So we can see in the water column how the impact of the marine pollution to the sea life. I think that's all from my response. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Widodo. And there will be a question for Pak Jerker, and then next letter from Pak Andre. Mr. Jerker, this is a question from Yasmin, Pajajaran University Bandung. The question is, how well is the cooperation ongoing between East Asia, especially ASEAN nation, to create a healthy marine environment? And what's the challenge for now and the future?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I think on some levels, the cooperation is actually very, very good. So you have a region where the countries are collaborating through a number of different bodies and on a number of different topics. You have, for example, ASEAN itself, which ties together a number of the countries in a socio-cultural community, socio-economic community, and it spans many aspects of decision making. So you can set standards in relation to plastic labeling. You could set standards in relation to recyclability of plastic. You could use trade law and so on in order to address issues of sustainability. Through COBSI, for example, we have an ongoing and very active collaboration between the countries on marine litter. And I think the regional action plan on marine litter is a perfect example of that, where countries actually adopted one already a long time ago, and over the last few years painstakingly revised it so that it would be up to date and speak to their current priorities. And there's a very active engagement in on both technical and political level to take new decisions and take action. I think you already see some results of this reflected in national frameworks. Indonesia has a very ambitious national action plan. Many of the countries have put in place plastic pollution roadmaps. So I think on many levels, progress is good. That said, of course, we can always do more, and we need to do more, we need to do better. If you look at the data, there's much that remains to be done. So I think further leveraging the tools at our disposal, deepening this collaboration and really ensuring that we, when countries move together on these issues that are transboundary in nature, it makes it possible to go further. Any individual country will be limited in how much they can do on their own. I think there's a greater confidence when countries move jointly.
Thank you very much. And then the next question, maybe any additional information from the other speakers for this question? For Pak Andre, Pak Mubarik, maybe that's
yeah. I will add a little bit. I think another potential existing and very potentially strong forum for collaboration is the Coral Triangle countries platform. So there are 6 countries under CTI, Coral Triangle Initiatives, but the opportunities at the moment seems to be underutilized. The opportunities to collaborate effectively, and one is because this is one of the causes, as I see it, is under-resourced. So maybe The CTI, as an initiative and a platform of collaboration, needs to get a better support from international communities like the bank, as well as the other bilateral support, such as Norway, maybe Sweden. Those are countries we know have, and also US, have a very good attention to the oceans issues.
Thank you very much, Pak Mubarik. We will start with a next question from Pak Andre, Mr. Andre Aquino. There will be a question from Mr. Kurniawan. He is from Ministry of Ocean and Fishery, Republic Indonesia. The question is, what is the key priority program to accelerate the Indonesian blue economy agenda? Could you provide example of the country in Asia that succeeded in this program? Pak Andre?
Okay, great. Thank you for the for the question. Yeah, right. I mean, a lot of theory. Now, what is the practice? Where are we doing this? Right. And I'll be honest. I mean, Indonesia is to a large extent at the forefront. Let me just go back to the previous question. I mean, on platforms for collaboration, for instance, right? Indonesia has a coordinating ministry for maritime affairs. Now it's even more, it's maritime affairs and investments. And as we know, with a very powerful minister, so this shows that it's a really important issue for the country. The other thing I would say about Indonesia, the RPJMN places a strong emphasis on the oceans economy. So I actually had a slide that tries to bring forward the several goals. Pak Mubarak talked a little bit about this, that the RPJMN, the new one, 2020, 2024, 5, has. So Indonesia is at the forefront. For the World Bank, we have been engaged in Indonesia for a long time, since the 90s, particularly on marine protected areas. And now I think we got into a point, and this is quite recent, this is less than 8 months, where we have started discussing a much more ambitious initiative with the country in the blue economy. And that's the project that Paulo Widodo alluded to, Oceans for Prosperity, which emphasizes integration. I think here is the point I would like to mention. When we started having these conversations with the high-level leadership at KKP, at Kemenkomar, at Bapenas, the one guidance that we were given is, we want a type of intervention that will help us break silos. Example is the implementation of WEPP, so the fisheries management areas, which is something that has been in the books for a long time, and it's extremely complex. Marine spatial planning, working on the rules, and then you have the provinces. So I mean, it's complex. But again, I do believe that Indonesia is making good progress and discussing the right things. I would just mention a few other countries. Vietnam. In Vietnam, the World Bank has been working a lot with them, particularly on specific sectors. Aquaculture. I mean, Vietnam has been doing a great job in moving the aquaculture agenda forward, with due concern to coastal resilience, right? So that's another good example. And I would just mention my own country. I'm from Brazil. In Brazil, the World Bank has been working with the FUNBIO, which is like the Biodiversity Foundation, on the establishment of what we call a blue finance platform. This is not a fund. It's not like the Blue Abadi here in Indonesia. It is more a coordination mechanism for different sources of funding. And the reason for that is that the blue economy encompasses very different sectors and types of activities. So trying to put all of these into one instrument probably is going to be difficult, because marine protected areas need one type of financing, such as what Blue Abadi is doing. Coastal fisheries need something else. Infrastructure, I mean, ports and so on, need a different type. Some are grant resources, some are subsidized loans, some are just commercial loans. So in Brazil, we have been partnering to create this sort of platform of collaboration. Let me stop here. Glad to talk more. Thank you, Pasep.
Thank you, Pak Andre. Maybe suppose Pak Widodo will add something in detail about the how to accelerate this kind of blue economy in Indonesia, because you are inside of Indonesian government.
Yeah, so it's very interesting if we talk about the blue economy, because all the aspect should be linked together, integrated, and so on. So yeah, we have in Indonesia, we already establishing the one map policy and one data policy. So probably start from with this policy, then all data can be integrated. So based on this data, we could have more scientifically to make a decision, and then working smartly and more efficient. Then all the investment economically will link to the socio-economy aspect. So all the aspect, the sector of the economy, the environment, and the social will have the what is called it, the proportional program, or proportional investment. So not only heavy to the economic only, but then we leaving the environment aspects, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Widodo. We still have around 20 minutes, and then there will be a question for Pak Mubarik, and then later for Pak Arisman. Pak Mubarik, the question is how far Indonesia succeed in achieving SDGs goal number 14? Is Indonesia open for collaboration in the regional level? And what are the challenges for that? I think even though you have explained in detail, but very kind to explain also what's the answer question. Please, Pak Mubarik.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Asep. Well, I think I would like to mention once again at the regional level at the moment, what seems to be strongest platform but underutilized is the CTI agreement and secretariat. Yeah. So we have this. I can't remember now what is the status, but it is an official 6-country agreement about collaborations for healthy for building the ocean health, for building assuring sustainability of fishery resources, as well as ensuring investment for livelihood of the people. So if we are talking about potential potentially workable platform for collaboration in the SDG 14. So this is one of the strongest potential. And secondly is the ASEAN Secretariat. I hope ASEAN Secretariat can engage more at the implementation level, not only collaborating at the policy level, but also facilitating more on the ground collaboration. I think those are potential. The other, I suppose, is the on the southern side of our southeastern side of our ocean, there is also a platform, ATSEF. I think this is a collaboration with that involves Australia and Timor-Leste. We can also take advantage of that. That's my answer in short. In terms of challenges, well, first of all, we have enough challenges in terms of making our enough internal challenges to make our MPA management effective. That's one. I think that's we need to gradually improve the orderliness of our house. That's for sure. And then secondly, across the units that deals with the conservation, And then thirdly, across the unit that deal with the fishery management area. So if, well, building on what Andre mentioned earlier, this blue economy, ocean blue economy, is a very interesting and powerful and hopeful concept, I would say, but it does require a lot more cooperation that we at the moment are prepared to do. So look at the FMA, for instance, for fishery management area system. One of our early research shows that for FMA 711, for instance, that requires collaboration of 17 institutions, yeah, across 7 provinces. Wow, that itself is a big challenge. Then let's alone talk about this part of the challenges. If you look at the how should we collaborate with the regional regional collaboration platform that also involve other countries like Western Pacific tuna collaborative platform, and also the Southern Indian Ocean tuna collaborative platform. So I think we are at the center of the action. I would agree with Andre on that. But we also need to step up our position to show that we do want to be at the center, and when we do want to ensure that we have a benefit and want to ensure the sustainability of our resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Mubarik. Maybe Pak Jerker or Pak Andre will have additional response for the experience to see the challenge by ASEAN countries to deal with this kind of SDGs 14.
Thank you. If I may, just a very brief addition. I think the question where we started related to Indonesia's engagement at the regional level, and I think it's important to note that, as was already pointed out by Pak Mubarik, that there are several avenues to pursue different types of regional collaboration, and Indonesia has been active in several of them. I think one thing I would add that's relatively recent is that Indonesia, through the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, has established a regional capacity center for clean seas in Bali. And so this comes very much out of a understanding of the importance of land-based sources of pollution to driving marine degradation, and the need for overcoming that, and the need for capacity, not just in Indonesia, but regionally. How do we build and then share and leverage capacity to address land-based sources of marine pollution? So this is an example of Indonesia's efforts in the regional space to really address some of the key issues enshrined also in the SDGs. Thank you.
Andre, any other perspective on this issue? Maybe let's.
Well, I mean,
okay, please go ahead.
Yeah. No, please. I think I can address this in the next question.
Okay, thank you very much. Pak Arisman, this is a question for you. This the question is how to educate, this based on your research, how to educate village people who live in coastal area to stop marine pollution. As you mentioned, there is plastic and macroplastic and macroplastic. Please, Pak Arisman.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Asep. Yeah, actually, when we discuss about the behavior change, of course, it takes time, but of course, there is several factors. Like, I believe in the coastal area, people, like in Bali, they also trust with the local wisdom. But of course, based on our going research now, we are doing in Citarum, in Bandung city, not only in the rural area, even in the city, because of course, this is not only marine pollution, also the behavior, let's say, for the waste management, how to segregate the waste in our house. So this is also takes time. So there's also needs law enforcement based on our research also now in Citarum. Indonesia tried to do a hard approach, not a soft approach, using the military, but looks like the society not really happy because this is people they don't want to throw the trash to the river because worried with the army. But we don't know yet after this program, army going to the Citarum, the behavior will be changed or they back again to the previous behavior. My suggestion is based on our discussion also with several actors, the importance of capacity building in the local level. So that's why our project is like I agree with Pak Mubarak mentioned because the ASEAN mostly in the high level dialogue, but we would like to do in the local context. So how to translate in the local capacity building, how to involving all the local NGOs, society, as well as local government. So our project will do that. That's why we combine the training and as well as the research approach. Hopefully, there's a sustainability in the context of following the reducing the pollution in the river and then going to the ocean, because also pollution from the ocean coming from several major river in Asia. So we have to solve the problem with the river before going to the ocean. Like I mentioned earlier, this should be integrative approach, not only Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries. So we have to start also from the river, also from the waste management issues, Directorate of Waste Management in the Ministry of Environment. And also add to Jerker mention about RC3S is about Regional Center for Clean Sea established by Indonesia. Actually is also a good initiative, but now we are working with them how to discuss. We have a next month expert group meeting. We try to involve all the experts in the Indonesia to discuss the solution, science-based solution to the marine litter. I also invite Pak Widodo in this forum, so also another scientist. So this one is very good. We start with a small scale. So it's a pilot better to transfer to as a best practice. I think that's all my comment, Pak Asep. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Arisman. This is the last question is for you all. And this maybe also the closing statement. And in your view, what is the significant factor, significant driver to preserve the ocean keep in healthy and within let's say 10 years ahead? And then what's the plans for driver? So I would like to ask first for Pak Andre to answer this question.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yeah, that's a big one, right? Let me put it on hold just for a second because I want to come back to this last point on the behavior change in the local capacity building. We have done some work on an assessment of what types of communication campaigns for behavior change have been working, and the results of this are available at Kemenko Marves website. And in addition to this, we prepared 4 communications playbooks. So basically, a very easy to use type of material that anyone that wants to engage local communities, schools in behavior change towards reducing, reusing, recycling plastic products can use. So I'm saying this because I think there is one very important point here. We need local activities. I think Pa Arisman made this point, and Mubarak keeps coming back to it. I think it's really very important, right? These are local issues. It's each school, it is each desa, it's each kabupaten that will make a difference in the big thing. So this type of local action, local leadership is so important. I mean, Indonesia has its local leaders, the Wali Kota of Surabaya and others, right? So I think this is a key issue. I would like to mention that the World Bank is also very involved in Citarum, as Parisman mentioned, that we have a solid waste management project that has really very strong support from the actors. I mean, really a lot. It's amazing. This week we had a meeting with ministers, the governor of Jawa Barat, and there is a tremendous effort to push this forward. So again, there is a momentum here. The problem is that the issue is big. It will take time, but I think if things continue, they are. I mean, I must say that I wish we had the level of momentum for other topics in the oceans agenda that we have for marine debris. Then I mean, I think we would really see things moving really well. Now, I would also like to mention one more thing that Indonesia is leading. It's the National Partnership for Action on Plastics, which is a World Economic Forum initiative co-hosted with Kemenkomar, and it's been also playing a very important role in leading discussions, including preparing a roadmap of actions, investments, and policies for achieving the 70% goal. So again, a lot of very good material. This document was launched a few weeks ago. It is available, and it's basically an attempt to bring actors together. The private sector plays an important role through praise. So again, on marine debris, it's pretty impressive what is going on. Now, I would then probably use this. I think the marine debris, the momentum of marine debris that we have been seeing in the country shows what can be achieved in 10 years. I mean, if we have agreement on some big targets, and SDG might be them, and the political will and financial support to address them, I think we can see major progress. I would just like, with a word of hope, I mean, there was a series of articles in The Guardian a few weeks ago that show one thing that's amazing about oceans, and I think that's why I am really passionate about it. It is that it's very resilient, and it shows results quickly. I mean, fisheries, when managed well, they rebound, they come back, and they show that your efforts are having an important result. So anyway, I think that keeping this momentum, focusing on what we can achieve, and the fact that, yes, if we engage, if we clean up, if we stop degrading, nature will do most of its job. Terima kasih.
Mr. Decker, maybe we'll have additional information from view of as a United Nations Environment Program coordinator, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And not so much additional information, but just to agree very much with what was just said. I think, you know, sometimes we are inclined to simplify things to one problem and one challenge. And what we have before us is actually very many interrelated challenges. And we can't only deal with one because it's not enough. We have to deal with all the things that we currently put very high on our agenda, such as marine litter, and it's a good example of what can be achieved when, you know, the whole machinery is put behind it. We would need to generate the same type of groundswell around some other sustainability issues, and I think successes is one way of doing it, showing that it really matters. So where we can notch up, you know, these real wins that lead to a market improvement in environmental status, but also that we can capture in the form of genuine benefits to people. Either it's jobs, it's money at the end of a month, it's food on the table, whatever it is, but really show concretely how it matters to any number of people, then I think you also get much more support. Now, the challenge is always we deal with quite diffuse issues, and while environments can respond very fast, there are many things that have to fall into place for us to register all those good things that I just mentioned. but it's not impossible. And I think if we put more coherent action into place, that, you know, where multiple challenges conspire to reduce ocean sustainability, we can, by solving a few of them at the same time, make an enormous difference. And if we can find one or two of those cases, I think we'll also see a very, very significant change in the region. And some countries, most countries, seem to be very prepared to push in that direction.
Thank you, Pak Jaka. Before Pak Widodo answer, please, Pak Mubarak, maybe have your perspective on what's the challenge for next coming years in protection of ocean.
Oh, the very first challenge is the immediate impact of the COVID. As some people lose job in the cities, they went home and putting more pressures on resources. That's the first challenge. And with that, then with more people needed to exploit natural resources, including fisheries, then laxity of law enforcement is also will be declining. So this is not to be anticipated, and I think we are starting to see it, at least in the terrestrial side. This one. The other challenges still related to that are the moral hazard issues that come along with the word emergency and crisis, and with that, as in any emergency situation, law enforcement getting weakened. Then moving forward, I think a couple of things. The first one is in our context, Indonesia. The first one is really to establish this integrated thinking of looking at the fisheries area and marine protected area as one integrated unit. So, and with that, we can see a better hope for the future of the fisheries. And then we really need to look at the integrations of small scale fisheries. You know that 96% of our fishermen are of artisanal size. Then there's a big challenge in making sure that they are well organized so they can be well integrated into the formal sector. That's, as I see it, that's the first within the KKP realm. And then secondly is to expand. If you look at the Bappenas NRPJM concept, it's already there. The concept of seeing WPP as a basis of blue economy. Yeah. How prepared is KKP to talk about it? This still unknown to us, to many people. So without KKP taking the lead also, because fisheries is, like it or not, is the main resources in the sea. Then without KKP taking a certain position, the concept of WPP as a blue economy base area will be falling apart before it gets established. So those are challenges I see. We really need to think more carefully about going into that directions and really looking at looking inside, how do we fix this many institutional challenges among us to make sure that we can move together more productively. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Mubarak. I would like to invite also the last from Pak Widodo perspective in this question as a policymaker perspective, maybe.
Mas Wid belum
Yep.
itu.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if we talking about the policymaker, so we know that we have so many institutions. So like what Pak Mubarak said, that we have KKP, we have the public transportation ministry, for example, and then we have the Ministry of Environment and even the provincial government and so on. So I think the coordinating Ministry of Maritime is having the big role to coordinate all these all these relation to manage all of the problem, so then we could go together to manage the ocean. So uh, for example, for the RZWP 3K, for example, at the moment we know that based on the mandate from the law number 23 year of 2014, if I'm not mistaken. So the RZ it's mandate to the provincial government, not goes to the residential government anymore. But this is we should take the opportunity to work efficiently. But in this law, the sharing authority also possible. For example, in the article of 19, article 20 and 22, then the provincial government could share the authority to the residential government to manage the ocean. So this is only the example. So I think we could go together to manage all the problem in the ocean, because if this is only conducted by the KKP, I think this is will not solve. I think that's all, Pak Asep. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Widodo, for your view. And then the last one, Pak Arisman, do you have still comment on this?
Yeah, only 2 words, Pak, related to healthy ocean. At least need to see. One is a commitment from all stakeholders. The second one is, of course, collaboration mentioned by all the speakers. I also inspiring by Pak Mubarik mentioned about CTI, because it's a very good initiative, but looks like in the region, also mentioned by Jerker, there's now also established a new one, Regional Center for Clean Sea. So my suggestion is follow up of this webinar. We have to sit together to work in the context of how to synergize or coordination, like mentioned by Bung Barik, not only Indonesian government, how to coordination within the project or the external factors. If I believe also donors will be happy. Like us, we got a project funded from Norway. The donors tell us to do a coordination with World Bank, with WWF. So yeah, we don't do the same things where we have to complement each other. I think that's the last one from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for all panelists, presenter, and speaker. And this is the end of our session. So far, we have more than 500 YouTubers, YouTube viewers, and it's very excellent viewers. And also because the presenter has already presented excellent papers and also stimulating discussion. So I would like to, on behalf of the organizer of this webinar, Center for Southeast Asian Studies, and supported by Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries Republic of Indonesia, I myself, Asep Setiawan, would like to thank to you all, and also thank you to audience. Stay with us. So I would like to end on with the favorite words today. Stay at home, keep healthy. So I will add keep away pollution from ocean and keep ocean healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
very much for
Thank
your.
you, Jerker, Andre, Pak Mubarik. Thank you.
So
So
have a good
Thank
day.
you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Bye
you
for
for
now.
inviting us to participate.
yeah, thank
Bye.
you.
Terima kasih semua.
Terima kasih Pak Widodo.